Somewhere in Memphis, Tennessee tonight, there's a grizzly bear who's been awoken from his sleep suddenly with a tingling on the back of his neck. He puts a paw back there, checking to see if it's a bug or something. No, it's the breath of the Sacramento Kings. Hot on the heels of the Memphis Grizzlies in the Western Conference standings, now just half a game back. It's beyond time we stop talking about the Kings falling to 4 and start talking about the Kings moving up to 2. Sacramento victorious on their home floor against the New Orleans Pelicans. And you're listening to Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season long. Today, presented by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer for ABC 10 News. And I know there are some Memphis Grizzlies fans watching. Some Memphis Grizzlies fans wondering, what is the Sacramento Kings, Locked On Kings host going to say now that the Kings are half a game back of the Grizzlies, who would be without John Morant for the foreseeable future, for some undisclosed period of time. They're also dealing with some health issues. The Grizzlies are vulnerable, and the Sacramento Kings are smelling blood. They are coming after those Grizzlies, as are other teams in the Western Conference, with tonight's 123-108 win over the New Orleans Pelicans. Like I said in the introduction, the Kings are just half a game back of Memphis. Now, the Grizzlies can take maybe a little bit of solace in the fact that the Kings have a pretty tough stretch coming up here, and we'll talk about that stretch later on in the podcast. But for this Sacramento Kings team to be 38-26, 12 games over 500 at this point in the season with 18 games remaining, to be 6-1 since the All-Star break during this playoff race, when so many of us here in Sacramento, so many of you listening to Locked On Kings, were concerned that the Kings, their lack of experience, their lack of moves at the trade deadline would hold them back at this time of the year when more experienced teams were gunning for them. Well, no longer are the Kings the hunted. Right now, it's the Memphis Grizzlies that are hunted, and it's the Kings prowling through the bushes, looking to catch them. What a position for this team to be in with 18 games remaining. But I know and I understand Sacramento Kings fans, and we've talked about this before, Sacramento Kings fans who still just aren't ready to let go of that feeling in the back of their brain or dark part of their heart that's saying, at some point, the other ball has to drop, right? Something has to give. This is the Sacramento Kings we're talking about. Something always goes wrong. When is this team going to fall apart? When is this team going to break my heart? I understand those of you who feel that way. I'm telling you, I am very confident that the ball is not going to drop for this team. That what we are seeing is what the Sacramento Kings actually are. This Kings team continues to respond game after game after game in gotta-have-it games. Sacramento takes care of business. I know it's been a struggle at times on their home floor over the course of the season to beat beatable teams, to win winnable games, especially against shorthanded opponents, right? I could point back to, seems like eons ago, but the losses on this home floor to the Washington Wizards and Charlotte Hornets. You could even point back to taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves without Karl Anthony Towns the other night, and the Kings were full strength in that game. They still lost. The Sacramento Kings without De'Aaron Fox tonight, taking on a Pelicans team. Yeah, that's without Zion, but they handle their business. They get a big team effort, which is another thing that we're going to talk about in today's podcast. A lot of guys stepping up with Fox's absence. And look, I have heard people holding the health of the Sacramento Kings, their injury luck, some would call it. I would prefer to look at it as injury success that this Kings team has had over the course of the season. And they use that in ways to undermine the Kings. Now, I'm not intending to call anybody out, because it's a very valid opinion when you're talking about the health of one team versus the health of another, and health always plays a factor. But James Ham on ESPN 1320's D-Lo and KC radio show today, he shared that he thought the difference between the Kings and the success they're having and the New Orleans Pelicans or the Minnesota Timberwolves, which that group of 3 teams, maybe you can insert the Portland Trailblazers in there, but that group of 3 teams is kind of in the same tier we thought coming into this season, right? We thought these were 3 teams that were trying to build into a perennial playoff contender with young talent who's trying to put all the pieces together and figure it out, and I agreed with that coming into this season. James Ham's take is that it's because the Kings have stayed healthy and those 2 teams haven't, that the Kings are in the position that they are. And to me, that undermines what the Sacramento Kings are actually doing. That undermines, and I don't think this was James's point. I don't think James is trying to take anything away from the Sacramento Kings. I think he's talking about how much better he feels those other teams would be, or maybe things would have evened out a little bit more than they had because or if Zion had played the majority of the season, or Karl Anthony Towns had been available for the majority of the season. I get his point. But in saying that, he is underselling a little bit and undermining what the Sacramento Kings have been able to do. Why are we holding the Sacramento Kings' ability to stay healthy? Why are we holding the success of this Kings training staff? Why are we holding the Kings starting center playing through a fractured thumb? De'Aaron Fox playing through multiple injuries this season. Look, the reason why he didn't play in tonight's game, he's out with a hamstring injury. He wanted to play. He wanted to go. It was Mike Brown's decision, as Mike shared with us before the game. Brown was the one that said, you know what, De'Aaron, I'm pulling the plug. You're not playing tonight because we got to save you and gear you up for a playoff race, and also hamstring injuries for someone who's as fast and who relies on his athleticism and his legs as much as De'Aaron Fox does. Hamstring injuries can be a little trickier. It can be a little frightening at times, and the Kings don't want to make it worse. De'Aaron wanted to play through it, and Mike Brown said before the game, had this been like a playoff game or a more meaningful game, De'Aaron Fox would have played through it. Why are we holding the health of the Sacramento Kings against them? Look, I understand Zion's out for the New Orleans Pelicans. It's not the Kings' fault. And the Kings still had to beat them without their star, De'Aaron Fox. I understand Karl Anthony Towns isn't playing. I understand the Kings played the Portland Trailblazers and beat the Portland Trailblazers earlier without Damian Lillard. I understand the Kings beat the Clippers on Friday night and Kawhi Leonard wasn't playing. Okay. Are we supposed to blame the Sacramento Kings for that? All wins count the same. That's like saying every Kings win by 1 point. Remember, they're 5-0 this season, winning games by 1 point. Those are less impressive or less valuable to the Kings than a 7 to 10 point win because it was closer than they would have liked. Wins are wins. The Kings are not responsible for the situations of each team. And anybody who wants to undermine the Kings being on the heels of the Memphis Grizzlies at this point, saying, well, the reason why the Kings are in this position and may pass the Grizzlies is because John Morant is out. It's not the Kings' fault that John Morant was an idiot on social media and brought a gun onto a team plane. It's not their fault. They're just taking advantage of the situation in front of them. It's an 82-game season. They're out there, and what's most important, what should be focused on, is not the fact that the Kings have been healthier than other people. It's the fact that the Kings, with their lack of experience, who have not been in this position and nobody expected them to be in this position, have stepped into this playoff race and are having success and are controlling their own destiny. That's the big key. The Kings have more games than anyone other than the Memphis Grizzlies against these, I think they and the Memphis Grizzlies had the same amount of games against other in-the-hunt playoff teams in the Western Conference. And the Kings, to this point, have been winning those games, have had success against those teams. Dallas Mavericks they've had success against, although that was before the All-Star break. They've beat the Clippers 2 times, right? The New Orleans Pelicans, even though they're pretty far below the Kings in the standings at this point, that's still another team that's in the mix. Kings handling their business against them at home. Like, that's what we should be focusing on. That's what we should be pointing out, and that's what we should be celebrating. We're not just looking for the negatives in each thing. Look, we know the Kings' defense is bad. We know the Kings have holes in their roster, but still they're able to overcome that and be in a position where they're 12 games over 500 in early March, playing meaningful games in early March. They now have a national TV game here, a massive game on Thursday in this building against a Eastern Conference opponent who's also surging and outperforming expectations to this point. This is what you want the Kings to do. This is where you were hoping the Kings would be a year or 2 from now. And here they are at this point. Let's not undermine that or sell them short just because they've stayed healthy or they're taking on teams that aren't as strong or aren't as fully healthy as they could have been and should have been. Doesn't matter if one team perfectly healthy would have done better against the Kings. Doesn't matter because the Kings are handling their business now. And I'll tell you this. If Zion played tonight and De'Aaron Fox played tonight, the result is still the same. The Kings are still beating the New Orleans Pelicans tonight because this team has proven all season long that they can respond when they need to. You can believe in your own time. You can believe whenever you want to. You can take your time. You can wait until the Kings actually make the playoffs. You can wait till the Kings win a playoff game. You can wait till the Kings win a playoff series. You can wait till the Kings do this 3 straight years. Doesn't matter to me. On your own time, until you believe and truly give 100% trust to this organization, that's completely on you, and it's your prerogative based off of how the last 16 years have gone. But I'm telling you, this team is not a fluke. This team continues to show why they belong in this position. They continue to respond when they need to, whether it's at home or on the road. Believe in this team, man. They're very, very successful. Now, let me share with you the most important stat from tonight's game. It's not Domantas Sabonis picking up his 8th triple-double of the season. It's not 7 Sacramento Kings players scoring in double figures to make up for De'Aaron Fox's absence. It's not the Sacramento Kings dishing out 39 assists as a team, again without their starting point guard. It's the fact that the Sacramento Kings held the New Orleans Pelicans to 49 points in the second half. Now, that used to be the standard of the NBA. If a team scored 49 to 50 points in a half, old defensive teams were disappointed, right? In the modern NBA, that's worth celebrating, especially for a team as bad defensively and who struggles as mightily as the Kings do on the defensive end of the floor. 49 points in the second half. If the Kings are able to do that consistently, yeah, they're a winning team. And we've talked about before how much better of a defensive team this team is in the second half versus the first half. You would love to get to a point where it's 3 quarters instead of 2, or it's as close to 48 minutes as possible, or the Kings don't allow a barrage of three-pointers like they did again tonight in the first quarter to open up this game. You would love for the Kings to get to that point. That's just not who they are this season. But I'm telling you, this team is good enough now, even in a playoff series, if they can keep a game close in the first half and then defensively get a consistent effort like this in the second half, they are going to go far in the playoffs. Now, maybe far is the second round or a second-round exit in 5, 6, 7 games. I don't know. But I believe in this team and their ability to play defense at certain stretches and certain points when it matters. And, of course, offensively, they're so damn good, they can outscore anybody. But the defense in this second half was huge for the Kings. Here's the Pelicans' scoring and shooting percentages by quarter, right? First quarter, the Pelicans scored 32 points. They shot 63% from the field, 71% from three-point range. They came out shooting lights out, and it was like, here we go again. For the second straight game, like the Kings are just going to get torched from three-point land, right? The Minnesota Timberwolves came in and scored or hit like 23s on the Kings when they were like a below-average team or bottom half of the league in three-point shooting. They came in and absolutely lit the Kings up from three-point range. I've seen the tweets. I've seen the posts on social media. Why does every single team not miss a shot against the Kings? Right? You make a good point. Teams come in with confidence. It looked like it was going to be that kind of night again. Second quarter, a little bit better. The Pelicans score 27 points, shoot 58% from the field, drop down to 44% from three-point range. Way better than the first quarter, but still not where you want it to be. Third and fourth quarters. Now, the third quarter, of course, was the best one. Kings hold the Pelicans to 20 points. They shot 35% from the field and just 14% from three-point range. And in the fourth quarter, Pelicans scored 29 points, 59% from the field. That number's not great, but just 17% from three-point range. Again, the fact that the Kings held that team that was shooting so well from three-point range in the first half to 14% and 17% in the third and fourth quarters, that is worth celebrating. That is worth pointing out for this team. That suggests halftime adjustments, but that also points to how much better this team has been defensively in the second half. Those are things that you can hang your hat on as a fan. Those are things that you can celebrate in these victories beyond just the amazing Kings offense that we know this group has. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the #1 way to play daily fantasy sports. The way it works is you pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under of their presented projections by Prize Picks. So whatever game Prize Picks will set a scoring average. Let's just say tonight it was, I think for tonight for Keegan Murray, it was 11.5 points, right? So if Keegan, you could pick if Keegan was going to score more or less than that. Well, he did score more than that. So you do that twice to 5 times with 2 to 5 different players, and it doesn't just have to be the top guys. It's everybody on the roster. You get those right, you can win up to 25 times your money, and it's just you versus the Prize Picks projections. You're not taking on any of those sharks that make a lot of money and make a living off of taking advantage of those who are on social, or rather on FanDuel sites and things like that, that want to just have a good time and are enjoying it as a hobby or just putting a little money on the line in a game that they enjoy. You don't have to worry about about that on Prize Picks. They offer safe and fast withdrawals. You can make entries really, really quickly for not just the NBA, but also the MLB and combat sports like boxing and all the major sports. They have them all for you on Prize Picks. And first-time users, you can get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 if you use our promo code LOCKEDON when you first sign up. So it's free money you get. You deposit $100, you get $100. You deposit $50, you get $50. It's free money for you to make money on Prize Picks. This is how you win as a team when your leading scorer is missing. De'Aaron Fox averages 25.5 points per game. That is hard for any team to make up, even a team offensively as good as the Sacramento Kings are, as deep offensively as they are. Well, they showed that depth again tonight. Kevin Huerter, 25 points. Domantas Sabonis, 19 points. Davion Mitchell, 15 points. Harrison Barnes and Trey Lyles, 14 points each. Keegan Murray, 13 points. Malik Monk, 11 points. That is 7 guys finishing in double figures, including 2 guys off of the bench and all 5 starters, to get you the scoring that you needed to overcome De'Aaron Fox's absence. That is the Kings team stepping up and winning this game, not relying on Domantas Sabonis, who, yes, did have his 8th triple-double of the season tonight and played really, really well. Not relying on 1 or 2 guys to carry them through. Sometimes the Kings need that, right? They needed Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox to each score over 40 points to beat the Los Angeles Clippers in Los Angeles. And it's good the Kings can get those performances every once in a while. But this is how the Kings as a team have won the majority of their games this season. Consistently 5, 6, sometimes 7 guys finishing in double figures, and it's great for the team to still be able to get that kind of contribution and that spreading of the wealth when De'Aaron Fox is not playing. That's tremendous for this team going forward. And look, we've talked to the players, and we've heard the players say, like, we know this team can score, right? But it goes beyond that. Like, it's a little special at this point. Like, I know the NBA is an offensive league, and basically to come in and have the success that you need as an NBA player, you need to have some form of an offensive game. So everybody should be able to score, have a good night, and get to double figures every once in a while, right? If you're going to be a consistent everyday NBA player. But to have a team that so consistently gets so many guys in double figures, so many contributions from so many players, that is really special for the Sacramento Kings to have. What a treat for Mike Brown to be able to have that, to where not only can he put together game plans trusting in different guys, but he can also sit back with his coaching staff and turn to Doug Christie or turn to Luke Loutz or turn to Jay Triano and Jordy Fernandez and say, I wonder who it's going to be tonight. Maybe Terrence Davis is going to go off again. Maybe Malik Monk will explode. Maybe Keegan Murray will start raining down threes. Or maybe Kevin Huerter will get on a heater like he was tonight and like he's been on for the last 3 games. Kevin Huerter tonight, 6 of 10 from three-point range. Here are his last 3 games. 60% from 3, 66% from 3, 75% from 3. Kevin Huerter's 15 of 23 from long range over the last 3 games. It's great to see from someone who struggled as mightily as he did in the three-point contest, right? But this is why, after the three-point contest and after the All-Star game, we talked to De'Aaron Fox about Kevin Huerter's performance. And I can't say exactly what Fox said because it's a family show. But Fox said, basically, speaking about the team, we don't give an F about what Kevin Huerter's performance was, the fact that he struggled. Of course, he would have liked to do better, and Kevin was clearly disappointed in his performance. But the Kings didn't care, because they knew that was a showcase, and when it mattered, Kevin Huerter was going to continue to step up. I know Kevin's been going through a tough stretch and has had a couple of cold spells. In all of February, he really struggled three-point shooting-wise. Some of y'all, and I say this with love, some of y'all are just too quick to give up on guys or too quick to allow your recency bias to change your opinion of players. I've shared with you that Mike Brown cannot afford to wait for players, cannot afford to wait for players to work their way through their struggles. And he's been very consistent with that. How many times, especially during February, did we see Kevin Huerter only play 20 minutes a night? Kevin Huerter sit down and Malik Monk basically take over his minutes for the second half of the game. Like, he's been consistent with that with a lot of players. But Kevin started this season shooting over 50% from three-point range. We knew that wasn't going to be sustainable, but he was red hot to start the year, and the Kings really relied upon that. Now here he is these last 3 games, red hot from three-point range, comes in his second straight 20-plus game in a row, and he does it on a night where you had to have it with your star and leading scorer out. Kevin Huerter's a gamer, man. Do not let people tell you that Kevin Huerter is not a starting caliber shooting guard here in Sacramento. I understand Malik Monk has had great games as well. Malik struggled tonight until the fourth quarter. He scored the majority of his 11 points. Malik Monk, I've shared with you, I think he's in the perfect role with his or coming off the bench. I was a little surprised that both Terrence Davis and Matthew Dellavedova got into the game before Malik Monk did tonight, at least in the first quarter, but that's neither here or there. Who cares? Malik didn't play as well as he could and didn't play as many minutes as he could tonight. But I love his role. And just like at times Malik's gone through cold stretches when he wasn't Band-Aid Monk earlier on in the season, Kevin Huerter's been going through cold stretches. Do not give up on him. Do not give up on Malik. Do not give up on these offensive firecrackers that the Kings have on this roster that can get going at any moment. Because shooters, when they go through tough stretches, they will swing back to the other side and get red hot. And Red Velvet is red hot right now, and that's good to see. I want to give so much. Actually, before I move on from Kevin Huerter, I got to point this out too. Kevin Huerter, another reason why he was consistently still playing, even though he was struggling from shooting or from beyond the arc, he's an underrated playmaker. Like, he had 8 assists tonight. He's had many games where he's 5, 6, 7 assists for the Sacramento Kings over the course of this season. That's extremely important that you can rely on that from your two guard, especially when you primarily play him with a scoring first point guard in De'Aaron Fox, not a passing first point guard. Kevin can take on some of that load at times. He also had 5 rebounds tonight, and Mike Brown has talked a lot about everybody on the team stepping up, rebounding. It's not just the job of the bigs and the wings to do that. All right. I'm so proud of Davion Mitchell. I'm so proud of Davion. Like, this is the kind of game from Davion Mitchell that we were hoping he would provide every single time that De'Aaron Fox has been out. And what I've noticed the most from Davion recently compared to earlier on in the season when he was playing either when Fox was off the floor or Fox was out of the game, he was trying to be Fox, or he was trying to do too much to make up for Fox. You can't make up for De'Aaron Fox. You can't replace what De'Aaron Fox does, but Davion Mitchell can play his game. And we know that starts with his effort on the defensive end. He got the Defensive Player of the Game chain tonight. He's had it more than any other player. That is an award basically made for him on this team, right? We know how good he is defensively. But offensively, if he can hit shots like he was hitting tonight. I mean, he hit his first 3, scored 15 points, went 6 of 8 from the field, 3 or 4 from three-point range, also had 6 assists, and like I mentioned, got that Defensive Player of the Game chain. Like, to see Davion get going, but to see Davion play his game, come in composed, recognize what his role was, and execute on that role, take advantage of everybody also playing well together, and look like he belonged. The Kings did not miss a beat tonight offensively when Davion came into the game and replaced De'Aaron Fox. And he didn't have to do what De'Aaron Fox has to do. He didn't. He had to just get his teammates involved, find the open man, and make the right play and make the smart play. And, you know, Mike Brown said after the game that there were a couple periods of time where Davion waved off what Mike was trying to run and what Mike was telling him to do, and ended up making a decision himself to go to somebody else or find the hot hand. And Mike said, and I quote, he made the right decision every single time. That's growth from Davion Mitchell. That deserves to be pointed out. And Davion Mitchell, who I've been more critical of, and most of us have been more critical of than any other player on this Kings roster this season, Davion Mitchell more than deserves his flowers for how he's played tonight and how he's played recently. This is the off night. This is that 6th man, 7th man backup point guard presence that if the Kings can rely on this from the second-year point guard every single night, you're damn right the Kings have a really, really good ace up their sleeve coming in off of the bench. Great to see from him. Also, Keegan Murray, got to give him some love too. If you listen to my post-game podcast after the Timberwolves loss, you know I was critical of Keegan. I was critical of how he came out of the gate looking lethargic, that he looked unfocused, and he only played 20 minutes that night because the Kings pulled him and shut him down pretty quickly because he was clearly not ready to go and he was a step slow. Well, tonight he came out of the gate. He hit his first 3. He had 2 or 3 deflections in the first 8 minutes of the game. He was fighting over screens. He was working hard on the weak side defense, which is usually a weakness not just of his, but of this entire Kings team. Keegan Murray was ready to play tonight. He was ready to play. He stepped up. He was excellent tonight. Far more active. Really, really cool to see. I blew past Davion Mitchell really quick. Want to backtrack. Here's Davion Mitchell after the game chatting with the media a little bit.
What's the key for you to stay in rhythm offensively when you come in a situation like this and you're getting more run with the starters?
Just be aggressive. Don't think out there. Just kind of just be yourself, be aggressive, and everything will work out for itself. I mean, I played this game for a long time, so I just got to be aggressive out there.
Davion, a lot of impressive team numbers in this box score, but is the holding the Pelicans to 49 points in the second half, is that the most important for you guys tonight?
100%, especially coming towards the end of the season. I know these wins, we're trying to get to bigger and better things, we're trying to get to the playoffs. So we know the playoffs that is going to be defensively throughout the whole playoffs. So we just kind of try to, I don't know, kind of just, I was about to say, kind of just get ready for it. Just be ready for the playoff.
Also, speaking of sound bites, you're going to hear from Mike Brown here in just a second. Harrison Barnes got called for a technical foul. It's his first technical foul since his rookie season with the Golden State Warriors. Harrison Barnes doesn't argue. Harrison Barnes doesn't get techs. Just his second of his career, and the man is 30 years old. So we were all very surprised to see him get that tech, and Mike Brown said he was talking to the referee and saying, hey, if this man's arguing, you should probably be listening.
The official I was talking to, I said, you know, it's got to mean a little something because HB never gets a tech. You know, he never does. And I said, because he doesn't argue. He goes, yeah, he argued on the last play. I said, no. I said, just in general, you know, in general, he's not one to argue. And when he does, probably means something happened, you know. And so I was a little surprised, but, you know, it happens every blue moon.
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat, something to satisfy that sweet tooth, but you don't want to deal with all the calories, don't want to deal with those candy bars or things that are bad for you, that make you feel bad or are counterproductive to you trying to pack more protein into your diet or lose weight or ultimately eat better and feel better about yourself, well, Built Bars provide that for you and then some. They're protein bars, but they're candy bars, essentially. So many different flavors, like churro. My favorite is mint brownie. They have like almond, coconut almond. They have so many different great flavors for you. And all these bars are covered in 100% chocolate. They're delicious, and they're only 130 calories on average with less than 5 grams of sugar and 15 or more grams of protein. These things are packed with protein. So good for you, so tasty. Look, I'm a picky eater, especially when it comes to protein-based products, right? I don't like a lot of protein bars, protein shakes, things like that, because I can taste the protein more than the flavor profile that's being advertised. Built Bars, I taste exactly what they're giving me. Plus, they have their really good Built granola bars, and they have their Built marshmallow puffs, which are protein-infused marshmallows. Give them a try, and no longer do you have to wait for the box to be sent to you on Built.com. You can go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club, go to the pharmacy section, and get yourself a box right then and there. Give them a try. You won't be disappointed. So before we wrap up, tonight's win was not only important for the Kings to get back on the right track and to handle business here on their home floor, and to do so, of course, without De'Aaron Fox. Tonight's win was crucial because this upcoming stretch for the Kings is getting tough, and it starts with a game that many Kings fans are nervous about, many maybe fear, but a game that I am so looking forward to. I wish I could put a fast forward button on life for the next 2 days, because Thursday night on TNT, Kings and Knicks, arguably with the exception of the Bucks, the two hottest teams in the NBA right now. Two somewhat surprise teams. The Kings definitely more surprising than the Knicks, but nobody expected the Knicks to be on the run that they are on right now. And Julius Randle typically cooks the Kings inside this building. Defensively, who knows who the Kings are going to have to match up against Julius Randle, but will the Knicks be able to keep up scoring-wise with what the Sacramento Kings are doing? We saw what happened last time the Kings got a national TV game against a New York-based team in this building. It was ugly for that team. Well, I don't think the New York Knicks are going to get pounded as bad as the Brooklyn Nets did, but still, it's a major game, not just in terms of both teams and them continuing their runs and their push for the playoffs. It's just a major game in the NBA. Some are calling it in a fun way an NBA Finals preview with how these two teams have played this season. Boy, would that be a lot of fun. But regardless, it's a game that I cannot wait for. Of course, national TV is a big deal for us here in Sacramento. I expect it to be a sold-out crowd, a packed house, a madhouse. I cannot wait for the Kings and Knicks. Of course, it's going to be a very difficult game for the Kings to win. I'm telling you, if the Kings win that game, whoo boy, if you think Sacramento Kings fans are walking around with a swagger now, just wait if they're able to pull that game out. But after that game, this is the upcoming stretch for the Kings. Following that game, they take on the Phoenix Suns in Phoenix, the team that's in fourth place, I think 2.5 games back of the Kings now at this point in the fourth spot. Then they're home against the Milwaukee Bucks. Then they go on the road for 4 straight. The Chicago Bulls, the Brooklyn Nets, the Washington Wizards, and the Utah Jazz. Now, hopefully during that stretch, the Kings can have a lot of success, because after that, they come home for 2 more very difficult games against the Boston Celtics in this building and the Phoenix Suns for the final time. brutal stretch for the Kings upcoming. If they make it through this stretch of games and are still, let's say, go over 500 for this stretch and are still moving up rather than down in the win-loss column, I'm telling you, they've secured the 3rd seed. They make it through this stretch, this Kings team is a 3rd seed without a doubt. But this is where they're probably going to, this is where, in my opinion, they're going to either win it or lose it. It's this stretch right here. Very much looking forward to that. Of course, we'll cover all of it here on the Locked On Kings podcast. If you're coming to the game Thursday, let me know. I'd love to see you, love to chat with you, and say hi. I'm planning on having Jerry Reynolds, the Jerry Reynolds, join me on the Wednesday edition of Locked On Kings. So please join me for that as well. Thank you so much for your support, as always. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up. Make sure you hit subscribe, turn the bell notification on so you know every single time that we post. I'm looking forward to doing another live show at some point here in the near future. And, of course, all my audio listeners, my OGs, I appreciate you so much. If you could, if you haven't already, go on to Apple Podcasts, leave a review, hit 5 stars, a little custom blurb about why you would encourage other Kings fans or NBA fans in general to listen to Locked On Kings. That would help me out a ton. Appreciate your support, as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.